If this class moves on to collections, maybe some data structure stuff in Java, it's really important that we include, with some minimal work, some other items that are going to make it, frankly, a heck of a lot easier on us in the long run. Now, again, that's if the class goes beyond, just this. In doing that, the best way of making sure that we use features that are very, very powerful in Java, we have to do which is called a complete or completing an advanced class profile. All that basically means is that it has a lot of different functions in it, like constructors, accessors and mutators, which you've covered before, operators, which we will cover here in a little bit, and then the toString function, which actually we've covered. So most of these we've actually already covered. It's the operators that we're going to start getting into, and they're used to do some stuff about comparing. And that's where things get interesting, because here's the questions you have to ask yourself is what is going to be publicly accessible, what's going to be privately accessible. We discussed that in a previous set of notes. But also, how are individual instances going to be compared or sorted? There might be some easy ways of doing that with just something like names, or maybe their GPAs or something, but you have to think about how is that going to be sorted, because frankly, we're all sorted in real life somehow. So we have to think about that as you're creating your advanced class profile. Now, again, most of the time we're going to give you guidance on what to do, or maybe for a project we'll give you some hint to do that. But it's something in the design of your overall class profile that we're going to have to think about. So let me show you an example. Here's our example. The highlighted green parts I'll get to here in a second. So that's coming attractions. So if you don't understand what's happening with compared to and what's happening with equals, I'm fine with that for right now, because we still need to go over it, okay? But what I want you to do is the exercises that I have for you, and keep it simple. Everything is here, if you can believe it. I know it's a little on the small side, but everything is here. So go over really these questions. And yes, some of them are getting into the compare and equals. So I'm giving you guided questions here that frankly the answers are all here. Don't overthink it. Get to work on it, and I'll go over an answer with you here in a minute. Number one, let's identify the data members. Now that should be pretty easy because it's string, first name, last name. Notice it's at the very top. Notice how I've tried to keep some type of order for you here. And again, that's the complete class profile and what I'm used to as well, too. Notice the toString function happens to be at the end. I'll explain that here in a little bit. And then we have our setters and getters. So notice I'm trying to make things easier. There's the constructors towards the top. Okay, so things have an order to them, and you need to follow. Just find the constructors. That's really easy. Towards the top again. Okay, nothing big. How will the toString display the instances of data? Well, again, toString function you should be able to find. It's going to print out the last name. Then there is a comma and a space, the first name, and then a new line with the get age. I bet a lot of you just kind of said, okay, last name, first name, and age. That's partially correct. It really depends on how things are laid out in the overall, well, way the string is set up. So please make sure that you're very, very particular about it. What does the compare to function really compare? So let's go to the compare to function. Now, there's probably some notes in here, but it does. Matter of fact, it says same last name, then check first. Well, just that. We're comparing names here. So think about this. If we had Sean Lupoli and Jessica Leupold, they're both different. Leupold's going to go first, and then Lupoli after that. But what if we had, which I had in class, had a Brian Williams and a Chad Williams? Which one's going to go first? Well, depends on last name usually goes first and then first name. So there, It would be Chad after a while, but still we'd have to check if they happen to be the same exact last name, then we would have to go ahead and then start looking at the first name from there on out, and that's that line right there, in order to make sure that there is a difference between the two. So that one's really doing first name and last name. What does the equals return when we really compare? The equals is going to compare and see if literally first name, last name, and age are all exactly the same. Notice the equals for the strings and then the double equals for the age because it's an integer. So it's really checking to see if there is a duplicate between the two. That's what equals is, and that frankly makes sense, doesn't it? That's what equal it is, okay? Checking to see if they're the same. So that's what the compare to is going to do. Compare to is going to do some type of ordering. First, last name, and then first name. The equals is just going to check to see if they're literally the same thing. That's the difference between the two, which we'll cover here in a little bit more detail here in a moment.